Hello, my bookish darlings. As you may know, I enjoy the occasional middle grade book. And one of the series I really love is Nancy Springer's Enola Holmes series, which has become 2 Netflix movies. And yes, I really loved the movies too. Who am I? I am the booktube goddess, the #1 drag queen booktuber on YouTube. And who is Enola Holmes? Enola is the younger sister of Sherlock Holmes, who becomes a detective in her own right at the age of 14. Now, when I read the books, I firmly believed they were middle grade because they had that middle grade feel to them. There was no romance. They were about Enola, which is alone, spelled backwards, dealing with a mother who disappeared, and brothers, Sherlock and Mycroft, who didn't even know what to do with her, so they decided to ship her off to boarding school. Enola, of course, wanted nothing to do with that and left to strike out on her own. But I recently looked up these books and saw they were listed as young adult, even though they don't have any romance or love interests in them, and read, again, to me, like middle grade. But since the character is 14, I can see why they categorize it as young adult. 13, 14-year-old protagonists are sort of in this no man's land in publishing. It's a little old for middle grade characters and a little young for young adult characters. So the publisher has to make a decision to tip them one way or the other, mostly because that's where it's decided where they're going to shelve the books in a bookstore. Anyway, this is a fun mystery series. The voice of the novels are from Enola's first-person point of view. She is super intelligent, has a dry sense of humor, is mischievous, independent, everything you want in a main character, especially one who is related to Sherlock Holmes. Now, how does this compare to the Netflix adaptation? My guess is that based on the huge popularity of Millie Bobby Brown in Stranger Things, she was given carte blanche. Pick a project. Whatever project you want, we're going to give it to you. And apparently, her favorite books were the Enola Holmes books. In fact, if you pick up any copy of an Enola Holmes book now, you'll see a little quote from Millie Bobby Brown. And she was also named as a producer in the Netflix movies. So good on Millie Bobby Brown. Keep promoting books. The first Enola Holmes movie is loosely based on the first Enola Holmes novel, The Case of the Missing Marquess. You may have heard me say the medium is the message, meaning that the medium of a story, novel, movie, musical, whatever, shapes the story. And when translating a story from one medium to another, the story has to change in order to be successful in that new medium. So you'll find striking differences between movies and books, usually, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a necessary thing. But depending on how much you are attached to the original story, it may color how you look at the adaptation. For me, I loved both the books and the movies, even though I thought there were some big divergences. For one, the mother. The mother in both the movie and the books disappears. In the book, it appears that the mother leaves pretty quickly and doesn't really play that important of a role as the book progresses. But in the movie version, the mother leaving is featured prominently, much more than the novels, especially when we get to the second movie. Another thing is a relationship between Sherlock and Enola. In the books, he is a misogynistic asshole. If you read the entire series, it's really interesting to see his relationship with Enola evolve, but he starts off really as not a very pleasant person. In the movie, he is much, much more sympathetic. Also, am I the only one, but is Henry Cavill miscast as Sherlock? I mean, I love looking at him. He's a gorgeous man. But Sherlock? Also in the books, Enola was never very physical. She was mostly solving her cases through deduction, her intellect, and her ability to disguise herself, much like the original Sherlock Holmes. When she becomes a detective, for example, and starts her own detective agency, she makes up a persona of a gentleman detective and then pretends to be his secretary. In the movies, because hey, we want action, Enola is some sort of martial artist and is much more physical than she is in the books. Again, I'm fine with that for the movies. The biggest change was the relationship between Enola and Lord Tewkesbury, the missing Viscount in both the book and the movie. This is why I read the novel as middle grade, because Tewkesbury, I think he was even a year or two younger than Enola in the book, but there was no romantic chemistry between them. In middle grade, usually the relationships are more about friendships or maybe sibling relationships. And in the books, Enola and Tewkesbury almost had this sibling relationship, at least in terms of their interactions. And he does show up again in one of the later Enola Holmes books, but he almost is a comic character at that point. But in the movie, there is definitely some chemistry going on, and I think that's fine. It's a movie. Millie Bobby Brown seemed a little older than 14, and it was aimed at appealing to the young adult market. So hinting at some sort of budding romance, I think, was perfectly logical. What do you think? Let me know in the comments, and while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Well, what about the second movie? It was not based on any of the books. It was an entirely new story, but it was a good story based on real life events, specifically the 1888 Match Girls strike. And I very much enjoyed the movie, but it was of course much different than the Enola Holmes books. Notably, Millie Bobby Brown grew up. Since the first movie was made to the second movie, she can no longer really pass as 14 years old, like she sort of could in the first movie. The romance with Tewkesbury makes a lot of sense now given their history in the first movie and how old they are now. Overall, I think I enjoyed the first movie more because I think the second movie tried to be a little bit too action-packed. There was this prison breakout. They featured the mother heavily, but I didn't think she really seemed to fit in with the story. Maybe because I'm too attached to the books that I couldn't get past that. That said, yes, I did quite like the story and the mystery and even the romantic subplot. But again, because I've read all the books, the story in the second movie kind of seemed more like fan fiction to me, where you ship two characters that weren't necessarily meant to be a thing, but it was fine. It was fine. All in all, I loved the books and enjoyed the movie adaptations. Both get my blessing. If you have read the books and or seen the movies, let me know what you thought in the comments. Until we meet again, may all the books you read and their adaptations be blessed.